Did the one cell say to his sister cell when she stepped on his foot? That's my toe, sis. Hey, eighth grade science teachers, welcome to our fourth video in this series where we are looking at the curriculum map, scope and sequence resource, all that stuff. Today, we are finally going to break down the pacing guide, so here's your landing page. Page 2 starts your first concept, pacing guide. This is where we actually go in. We're looking at the activities that fit within a week. There's a lot of extra helpful resources here to help you plan out a week, a day lesson, all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to go through and highlight all the stuff I put in here. I realized I didn't change something, but that could be easily fixed just by doing that and doing that. Perfect. And how can this be useful for creating your lessons? I'm really looking forward to this year. And then the last video, the fifth one, is going to be a video where I take all of these things together to build out a example lesson plan. There'll be 1 day lesson plan, but it'll probably have enough content to cover 2 days, and really show how all of this can be used in a cohesive manner to create engaging and fun lessons that the students will learn, and that can fit your teaching style. So let's dive into this, and hopefully this starts to make everything clear. And then the last video will pull everything together and you will be a pro at using Discovery Ed and my new curriculum app. So starting off at the top, you've got the name and what is going to be covered in this concept. So eighth grade starts with motion and starting with frames of reference. Motion's not new, but frames of reference is. So this is some interesting discussions to have with students. Definitely spend your time kind of getting that set up, because it comes in very handy as you move throughout the year. Talking about frames of reference when you get to the chapter on the solar system. You got to have kids picture themselves in a different frame of reference to view the Earth-Moon system, the Sun-Earth-Moon system. And so having this discussion now gets students used to this vocabulary of, okay, things move different depending on my frame of reference. So student learning objectives. I find this section here will be incredibly useful for teachers because in most schools, they ask you to have written up student learning objectives, typically in the form of I can statements. So here you are. This comes from Discovery Ed, by the way, not me. I just copy paste. Our student learning objectives that are tied directly to what the learning is about. So use these guys because one, you've got your vocabulary built into them. You've got high DOK level language like construct. I can investigate and gather evidence. So it's going to be the right language. It's going to be impressive for your coaches and your vice principals, all that sort of stuff. So use these. If you're going to add things, you can modify these for sure or take off whatever you need, but that's a good spot to start for creating those. The guiding phenomena suggestion: why do space objects fall to Earth? Remember, we talked about this in the previous video. If you watched that, that's on the intro page for our concept. And what this is useful for is this is what they're trying to answer by the end. So ask students this questions at the beginning, and then when they come down and they do the explain assignment, which would be activity 15 in this case, it's going to ask them that same question. Only that time they need to provide their claim, their evidence, and their reasoning. And I have a resource listed later on that's going to help with those other parts. So that's going to be a big part of planning out your lessons. You got your two standards that are tied to this concept. This is just straight from what Discovery Ed says the standards that are covering. So these should be covered. But if you want to look at the breakdown, look at the words, if you're looking to incorporate more stuff into this or pull map test questions, this is eighth grade, you can find the standards that are aligned and kind of use that for your planning as well. All right, so that's kind of all planning out your lesson plans. Now we get down into the actual content. The way I see this being useful is over on the right is the most useful spot. And as we move left, it's less, although it's all important. So keep that in mind. Right here we have, so This column here is the Discovery Education resource. Right now, everything here is Discovery Ed. That's not to say you can't use other stuff, and it's not to say I'm not looking to put other stuff in here. But for version 1 of this new curriculum map, I'm saying, here's our resource. Let's stick to that for now. And then as we find other things that better fit in here, or we find things in here that don't work, we can start to make modifications as we move forward. But you guys are the ones teaching it, so you're going to be the one who gives me feedback. Remember, I'll ask for feedback. There'll be a link here. Feedback on things that worked, things that didn't. And so as we build this out, this might change based off feedback, and it's got to have more than one person saying, I don't like activity 3, and that'll help us improve. The other thing that I got here is this Google Drive folder that's linked for alternative lessons designed by teachers, you guys. And so as you go through, and we've already prefaced this with summer school, I had a teacher creating good student documents that go along with all these activities. I'll steal those, borrow those, ask for those, and we'll put them in this Google Drive folder. So if I get them from a teacher, I'll put his name on the folder and all the things he used, and you guys will have access to go and make copies of those and use them for yourself. That Google Drive folder, I will be the only one with the manager access, but you guys can view, make copies of things and things like that. So that way nothing gets accidentally pulled out of it, but you guys have access to all sorts of teacher created stuff, and that will grow as the years go on. Some of the units have some additional reading that support the teachers. 8th grade didn't really have any, so this might just be deleted, or I'll find something to help replace that with, but you can ignore that for now. All right, so when we're actually starting to get into what it is that we need to teach the students, we start with the unit phenomena, which was listed up here. But how do you actually present that to the students? They give you a few options. Now, if you want to know where this came from, your teacher edition book has this at the beginning of a unit. So I just snapped a picture of it, converted it, and here you go. Created a nice little document. It always gives you 3 different options, and they give you here's if you don't want to spend time on it, here you go. You can just, this one's ask students these questions. And so this is a class discussion type option. Option 2, challenge the students to think like an engineer and design a device that uses the ion propulsion method described in the reading passage. And so you'd have to go find the reading. Did I find that? No. So you'd find the reading passage, propulsion and Newton's laws, and students can come up with this device. So that takes a bit more time. They have to do a reading that develop the device, but it helps you kind of get into that conversation. Option 3, kind of that middle ground. I would look at these, what fits my style, what fits how I want to have this classroom run, what sort of time do I have allotted for this, and then that's how you would introduce this intro phenomenon to your students. So I like that they give you different options. I'm also trying to go and find different resources, videos, articles, and things, and I'll have those linked here as well as other supporting things that you can introduce this phenomenon to your students. We don't want to spend too long on it because we want to get students to where they can start to learn to better answer that question. And then you get into your engaged category. If you watched the last video, remember I said you don't have to be a master of navigating Discovery Ed, because if I want to get to activities 1 through 4, I just click on the engage link right here. And voila, activities 1 through 4 are listed right there. So I don't have to be a master at it. I think that as we use things more, this will just become natural. You'll move around it, no problem. But for the time being, at the beginning of the year, boom, I take you right to where you need to go. And you got your different activities there. In the next video, I'm going to show you how you don't just go into activity 1, assign to students, activity 2, assign to students. But instead, I'm looking at the activities. What can I pull from these? How can I make a lesson out of it? And most things we don't need to assign to students. We can build engaging dynamic lessons. And then some things, which I'll talk about in a bit, we do assign to students so that we can collect data. You'll also see this listed here. 8th grade doesn't actually have a ton of these. In fact, in the first unit, that might be the only one. Oh, you got one more down here. They really put in a lot of these in 6th grade, less in 7th, and even fewer in 8th. But in some activities, and let's go ahead and open it up, activity 2, they will have listed different, they call them SOS strategies, and these are phenomenal. So we actually did this one for summer school, and it's having students working in groups with Post-it notes in an envelope before they go and watch a video on their own, all this fun stuff. And this video here will explain to you how the activity works. And so that way you can do it in your classroom. Now, the reason I linked them here is in case you don't want to go in and navigate Discovery Ed and do all that stuff. I just linked straight to the video because these can be used in any lesson. They're not tied specific to that one lesson. These are just general strategies for fun and engaging classroom activities. And so you can go ahead and find those. There's actually a channel on Discovery Ed that has a ton of these if you're interested in more of them, but that's opening Pandora's box. So I've at least listed them where they are used in the curriculum. So those are super, super good. I've also put into every engage section the vocabulary builder activities. These, again, not me, pulled it off that intro tab page we looked at on the Discovery Ed video because they were hidden all the way down at the bottom. But for every concept, it gives you 2 different vocab activities that you could do. So you can look at it. Maybe you choose one. Maybe this is the one you intro the concept with, and then you do this one at the end. I don't know. You can have all sorts of different ideas for these, but you can do these for all the vocab words. The only change that I'm going to make to this document is right now is the PDF. The links don't work. So I'm going to rechange this so I post the Google Docs so that way you guys can actually use the links in whatever assignment you're using. So that will be one small change for you guys. So that's like your engage. So think about, you've got introducing the phenomena, you've got all these activities, you got the vocabulary builder, whatever else is going on week 1. That's pretty much a day or 2 right there. And then I put a few more activities in here. Actually, I scheduled week 1 to be actually pretty light. Instead of a 5-day week, I kind of put it as like a 3 or 4 days worth of content because I knew that first day or 2 things will be a bit chaotic. Students have laptops yet. So it's kind of lighter on the things in week 1. So that way you don't get behind right off the bat. So I have eased these things into it. So I don't think that you're going to get behind on the actual pacing. And if you remember from the other video, how did I do the pacing? Well, on the, where they list out the actual activities, they put little time estimates, 10, 25, another 10. So these 3 are a day. So that's how it all got kind of scheduled out. I just followed what they had. And that first week, I've made it a little bit lighter. So when you're finished with the engage, this is typically 1 or 2 days, just getting the students interested, thinking through things. Now they have a bunch of questions. It's like, all right, we're going to go and answer those questions. So in the explore category, this is where we actually answer questions. But before they explore, I put this main idea graphic organizer. Now, this is really nice, and I'll tell you how I envision this being used, but it's the exact same template, the same document for every concept, grades 6 through 8. And this is another thing I'll probably download and just have the PDF so you don't have that long load time. But picture this with me on a possible way this would be used. And then as teachers, if you guys can design different main idea webs that pertain more towards the concept, then we can have a variety of different things. But students will need to answer this question by the end, correct? So, which is, why do space objects fall to Earth? I'm going to put that question in my main idea. Why do space objects fall to Earth? And then as we go throughout our different topics, well, here's a reason. Here's a reason. That's a reason. So there's my claims rather. Here are my claims. And then as we learn more, here's my evidence for this claim, my evidence for that claim. And now we're getting our claim, evidence, and reasonings to answer that question when we get to the explain category. And so students, as they fill these out, boom, is folded up into my notebook or in my folder, whatever structure you use in your classroom. All of a sudden, when we get to the explain activity, it's like, get out your main idea web. Here's all the ideas that we learned. It's easy. I'm just using this, boom, write it, done. So that's how I envision that being used, but it is just that one template. So if we design or create other ones, I would love for those to be shared, especially if they pertain more towards specific contents. Okay, so under the explore, that's where most of your activities are. This is actually a pretty short concept, only 14 activities, well, a few more, and you have another SOS here. So you'll work through all of those. This is where a lot of your hands-on activities come in. And so trying to get students engaged, super critical. You have your explain. We talked about that one. Elaborate. In my previous video, I talked about how that's your high level, get the students really thinking out of the box and extension activities. Or you can incorporate them into some sort of classroom project. And then finally, you got your, and these are additional resources that you might find useful, but aren't actually part of the work. Your evaluate tab, you don't have to go here to access the different assessments because they're also here, your practice, your summative, and your performance. So that can help shorten up navigating to find those. Okay, so that's the first column. You see all the contents there. I'm using that to plan out my lessons. I've got the link so I can jump right to the stuff. Beautiful. Moving a tab over are my suggested assessments. These are ones that I actually do suggest that we assign using Discovery Ed, because say activity 4, for example, activity 4 is under engage. This actually asks students questions they haven't learned yet to see what they know. And then in the further later assessments, it asks those same questions again. And now I can see, here's what you knew before, here's what you know now, and look at that growth. And if I do that on Discovery Ed, I've got my data right there. So that's why I put them here, so you can kind of preview what are the questions, when are they coming up, all those sorts of things. So very useful. Hands-on activities and interactives. If it's got this highlighted, requires advanced preparation. I think I put it here. No, I got off of it. So let's click it. These are labs that use some of the materials from the kits. And so you'll want to look ahead and go find the things. Typically, it's not much, like the beach ball of the earth, Newton's cradle. These are all stuff that's in the bins. But if you're missing something, you'll let me know and I will bring you some. Like stopwatches, it says it's not in your bins, but we definitely have stopwatches. Like we can get you sorted if you don't have those. So that's super useful for looking ahead. If it doesn't have that highlighted portion there, let's open this up and see. That means it's probably going to be a simulation. There you are. So you have a simulation here and the teacher's guide and all that stuff. So it doesn't require getting materials, but viewing the simulation for how does it work. For the different labs, I've started with 6th grade, creating videos on how these work. And so hopefully those will be useful for teachers on setting up the equipment, what are students going to have questions about, troubleshooting, and all of that sort of stuff. So I'll have some videos posted, hopefully, as the year moves on, we'll get those made. All right, and then moving left from there, right now, this column is called Big Ideas. And basically, this is actually stuff I typed up. I looked at what's this week about, typed up what are the big ideas. Now, the big ideas you're going to get when you're lesson planning. So I think this could be utilized, this space could be utilized more effectively. One of the pieces of feedback I got from summer school was that scaffolding, this assumes that students have learned things in previous grades. What if they didn't? And so thinking through, okay, what if they didn't get those learnings? What are some scaffolding strategies, materials, resources, videos, readings, etc.? So that way, if you've assessed your kids and it's like, oh, we need to talk about outer space, but they have no idea about altitude and how the air gets less and all that stuff. So like there's some missing gaps. Boom, we have that in there to help your students all get caught up. So that might change moving forward. And then the weeks. I've told you guys how I developed that using what they've put on there. So hopefully that's pretty straightforward. And then it just repeats as you move on down. The next concept, and then at the very end, it's like, here's your unit performance assessment, unit project. We have the quarter assessment. You don't have to do all these things. These are just things that are available to you guys to measure student success in different ways. So before I ramble on for far too long, as I tend to do on these videos, we'll end it there. Hopefully that helps you see the structure, at least, of this, start to maybe see, okay, I could see how this could be useful. And then hopefully the next video really catches everybody when I present to you an example lesson, building all this stuff together. I'll have it all built into a lesson plan. I'll give you access to it. You can use it. You can be inspired by it, whatever it is that you want. And hopefully that ties everything together and we'll be ready for a successful school year. So thank you very much, you guys, and I'll catch you in the next video.